Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Xobin Talks. Today, I have with me Mike, aka Batman Cohen. He's the founder of Wayne Technologies, and I'm really excited to have Mike on the show. Mike, how are you doing? Good morning.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Amrit. I am doing well. I'm interested to talk about AI and Chat GPT within the recruiting space. It's something that you and I have discussed already, and something I'm discussing more and more actually as more time goes by since Chat GPT's release. So things are going, man. The market's in a weird place, but it's a great opportunity for people to take some time and really up their skills and learn more about what's new and trending in our business.
I want to understand your story, Mike. It's very interesting. I want to understand, how did you end up into the kind of profession that you are in right now? I also see that you've got quite a diverse profile. You've also been a cycling instructor, if I get that right.
That is correct. Yeah.
You have advised so many companies. You're a cycling instructor, and you run Wayne Technologies. I want to understand more about you, and how did you end up in this profession?
Yeah. Thank you. So I think I joined recruiting how I imagine most people have, which is they kind of fell into it backwards. So I was 21. I graduated college a year early because I didn't love where I went to school. No offense, the school was great. I just didn't love the area. And I saw an advertisement back on Craigslist, when that was a thing, for an entry-level sales job. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I talk to people. And it wound up that was actually in tech recruiting for a recruiting agency. And I've been an agency side recruiter ever since I was 21.
Wow, wonderful.
So, yeah, it just so happened just about 6 years ago, this September will be 6 years, I decided to venture out onto my own to be able to approach the business and the industry and everything the way that I really wanted to, not in like a way that's been established already, or a way where people have seen proven success, which is great. I mean, I'm glad for them. But I really wanted to take a different approach. I wanted to try and innovate. And I also wanted to have the flexibility and freedom to mess around with different technologies and see how I could bring them together to work more cohesively with one another. So started doing that 6 years ago, and basically started sourcing realistically 5 years ago. And I've just been a sourcer, providing sourcing services to organizations ever since.
There's one question that I've always been wanting to ask you. Your LinkedIn profile has linkedin.com/Batman Recruiter. What's the story behind Batman Recruiter?
Yeah. I was waiting for this one as one of the first questions. So I was working for a previous company, the one before I started my own, and I was in New York City at the time trying to think about my own personal brand. And right around that time, Donald Trump started running for president.
Okay.
And the relevance here is when he was running for president, he had a lawyer who was based out of New York City who was making the news because he was a real jerk to people and jerk during interviews. Mm-hmm. And his name was Michael Cohen. And I realized I am never going to make the front page of Google, or the first page. So I never read comics as a kid. I read my first when I was 19. It was Long Halloween by Batman. And I fell in love with the juxtaposition, I think, between him and the other two members of the Trinity, Superman and Wonder Woman. Sorry to nerd out for a second, everybody. And I thought it was really interesting that, if you look at Superman and Wonder Woman, they disguise themselves, who they really are underneath. They disguise themselves to be an ordinary human so they can fit in. Whereas Batman is the disguise. Bruce Wayne, the human, is the person underneath. And I thought that was really interesting. And he was one of the world's first great detectives, right? Mm-hmm. In the 30s, it's how he got his start. His world's greatest detective. It's DC Comics is literally Detective Comics. And I thought, I'm kind of like a detective. Like, let's see how this goes. And now, what is it, 8.5 years later, it just stuck.
That I bet you get that asked that question very, very often.
I do. And it's a true story and a funny story. So I'm always happy to share.
Awesome. So, Mike, we've been in this particular space, and Chat GPT has been around for 7 months. As of recording today, this is June 2023. So Chat GPT has been around for 7 months. What's changed? Has anything really changed in the field of sourcing or recruiting?
Oh, it's such a loaded question. So GPT in general has been around for years. I think so. Like, I'm going to, for the sake of the rest of this conversation, I'm going to distinguish between the two of those, because GPT has been around to develop, like for developers to use as a large language model to build off of for 5, 6, 7 years now. So like, that's not necessarily as new. So what I'm going to focus on based on your question and kind of our space is solely Chat GPT, which is the site that you can go to, right, to actually interact via a chat prompt with Chat GPT. So has it changed anything? I think yes. Yes, it has, but I think the change is from a paradigm shift more than a tactical. The recruiting industry has changed. If you're listening, I'm waving my hands like magic. And the reason I say that is I don't see Chat GPT fully taking over functions within recruiting. I see it taking over tactical jobs within recruiting. So what do I mean? I need to write a job description. So instead of trying to come up with one on the spot, I'm going to have ChatGPT write it. And then I'm going to go through and change it and put it in my own words and add my own blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So a little bit of that like creative tactical prompting. Same thing if you're looking at like a message to a candidate. You're like, hey, write a message to blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Take that, pull it out, and I'll write it back. So one of the things I think it's done in talking to people, and this is even just outside of recruiting, this is just generally, is kind of wake people up a little bit to like what technology can do.
Yeah.
Right? Because people are like, wait, what? You put in, write a job description for a chemical engineer in Minnesota, and this is what it spit out. It was like this good. It's like, yeah, the ways that I think it's making a tactical change, right? So one is the paradigm. On the tactical side, more technical folks are using it to, like, for in my case, help me write code. So like, I'm writing scripts for Google Sheets. So I'm noticing I'm doing the same thing over and over, where I'm like organizing columns or deduping or whatever it is. And so I just asked ChatGPT, hey, write me this code. And like, it took a little back and forth and everything, but like, I'm coding out scripts that I can use and then publishing them into the marketplace so I can use them across my domain. And then the other big thing for me, and I don't hear people talking about this as much, and I wish they would, which is, it is an amazing aggregator and summarizer of data.
Yeah.
So I've been using a tool in conjunction with it called Clay, which is a super cool tool. It's like a spreadsheet with like enrichments and APIs built in, right? And so what I can do is, within Clay, I'll have like a column, it's literally a spreadsheet, right? A column of like news articles about a company, a column of LinkedIn posts from a candidate, a column that's their summary on LinkedIn, and then, a column that's their name, their company, their title, where they live, and how long they've been at the company. So I've got all this data, let's say for 100 people. So for each person, you're looking at like 4 data points that would have to be read entirely: an article about the company, their summary, their most recent LinkedIn post, and what they've most recently been working on at their job, right? Add all of those up, and you're looking at, like, if you're a fast reader, I am not. If you're a fast reader, you're looking at just under 2 hours just to read through that data. That's not then including the time that it takes for each person to then summarize each of those and put them into a paragraph so that person knows you're reaching out to them specifically, right? That's a real long amount of time, particularly for recruiters who have lots of roles to work on, like most of us do, right? So, I mean, maybe not right during this time frame, but like generally. So wouldn't it be awesome then if you could use something like Chat GPT to say, hey, summarize this, summarize this, summarize this, summarize this, and then use those together to put out to output a recruiting email referencing each of these things. So what I'm using it for is to summarize and then aggregate data. And so it spits out this recruiting email that doesn't sound like me. It's not what I would normally write, but I don't have to spend 2 hours going through and reading all these articles, reading all these posts. It's already there for me. And all I have to do is spend like the 10 minutes, maybe, just rewording it into my own way that I speak.
Style of writing. Probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're basically taking a 3-hour work and you are bringing it down to max 10 minutes, probably.
That's right.
Wonderful.
That's right. And so people will ask or have asked like, hey, what's the validation that works? Right. Because that's realistically, it's fine to say like, oh, it's saving me all this time, or, oh, it's blah, blah, blah. But like, realistically, what's this doing? Well, I can tell you, I've been doing this for every first email in my sequences for my clients for the past, I don't know, 4 months now. What is it? 3 months now.
Okay.
And so one of my clients is a security SaaS company in New York. Every first email for every role I've worked on for them has been this highly customized, written by Chat GPT and then adjusted by me email. And I can tell you, we have done, how many are we looking at here? 4 different roles, 2 executive, 2 non-executive roles. And response rate is 51.14%.
That's a response rate.
Response rate. That's cold outreach response rate.
Wow. Can you help us understand what was it before? If you don't mind me asking that number.
No, I don't mind at all. I believe our average is just under 30%.
Okay. And this is a response rate for the first email or for the entire sequence?
This is for the entire sequence. I'm actually pulling up, as if you see my eyes scrolling on the screen, I'm literally pulling up right now the 1, 2, 3. I just pulled up the last 3 that we did, and I'm pulling up the steps so I can see exactly what the first email response rate is. Okay, so on this is for a policy leader. This is almost like a government lobbying role, so not like a super easy. This is an executive position. First email alone got an 18% response rate.
Wow.
A VP of sales role, the first email got a, oh, no, I'm sorry. That was the number of people interested. I'm looking at the wrong column. Is 4142 because I A/B test them, so I'm just like calculating the difference. So the first email for the government affairs role got a 36% reply rate. The first email. For a VP of sales, the first email got a 19% reply rate. And for a VP of professional services, the first email got a 25.5% reply rate. The very first email. That doesn't include any of the rest.
This is post your aggregation and summarization using Chat GPT. What was that number previously when you weren't using Chat GPT? Was it 8% or in single digits?
Typically. Yep. Typically. I can go and just pull up some previous ones as well. I'll pull up I have some technical roles and a mechanical engineering role I can pull up here. to actually share viable numbers with people. So I'm not saying like this totally works. So for a full stack eng, my first email got a 7% reply rate. And to be clear, the overall reply rate for this full stack engineering role was still 24%. So not low, but not great. The product manager role, the overall response rate for this was 32%. My first email got 9% reply.
So basically, you've more than doubled, or I would say tripled the response rate for the first email.
Correct.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Correct. Yeah, it's just effective, and something that had previously, in order to do that, had to be done very one-off. Yeah. Right? Like you're not going to be doing that for 200 people a day. You just there's no time in the day. You'd have no time in the day to do anything except write emails. Whereas I can actually do that now. Yeah. It's a very, very different mindset, thinking through what is it that I don't have to spend my time doing. Mm-hmm. And then saying, okay, great. How can I then quote unquote outsource this to Chat GPT or GPT, whichever, to make my life easier and make me more efficient?
So this is one use case that we've spoken about, and this is a real use case. And it's great that you've given us real statistics. Do you know of a few other use cases that have worked for you or for your clients where they've used AI in talent acquisition or recruitment? The reason why I asked this question is there have been an abundance of startups and companies which are stating or claiming that they're using AI in recruitment, but it's all just faff. There's no real use case to be made out over there. So I want to understand from you if you've seen real use cases where your clients or you have actually seen results. One of them you've already mentioned right now, but I want to know if there are a few more.
Yeah, I think in order to get into this, I think it's important to also take a quick second and discuss like, what is AI? Right? Because like everybody's throwing around like, we work with AI, our tool is AI, blah, blah, blah. And like the truth is, and this is going to upset a bunch of people, is like, no, it's not. Your tool is a machine learning algorithm that learns from a yes or a no input over time and then adjusts based on those yes or no inputs, finding commonalities from the previous setting. It's not actually artificial intelligence. It's a really, really complex math algorithm, which is cool, which is super cool. I'm not downplaying that, right? So first off, when I hear AI, I'm automatically like, okay, that's fluffy and cute. Like, great. So what is using AI and what are the benefits of doing this, right? So if we're looking at a sourcing platform, you've got, I think the two big ones out there, Hire Easy and Seek Out. They both have an AI component built in, which is to say you run a search and then you can thumbs up or thumbs down things as you're going through, and it learns from what you thumbs up and what you thumbs down. So good news is for like super early stage recruiters or recruiters who aren't great at sourcing, or recruiters who are too overworked to really like get into the meat and the potatoes of a sourcing workflow, that can be really helpful to just get something into the pipeline and start working through it. Ultimately, I think that's where our industry will head at some point, is the more abstracted we can get from the need to write these complex Boolean strings and be able to just tell a computer, this is what I want, find me this thing, right? There's a tool called Perfect out there that's trying to do that right now, based out of Tel Aviv, I think. And so I think there's that use case for AI to help with speed and recruiters who have too much on their plate to spend an abundance of time sourcing. Mm-hmm. I think the other piece that people may overlook when they're thinking about like this cool AI thing that's out there is like, people are using this every day. If you run a search on Google today, you've used AI. You just didn't know that you were using it, right? Same thing on LinkedIn. LinkedIn uses its own AI to assume, predict, adjust, whatever you want to call it, to what it thinks you're looking for. And so, you type in the word engineer, like, software engineer, it may return back people who are software developers. That's not a mistake. That's LinkedIn using its own AI to say, hey, based on the fact that you put this thing in, I'm assuming this thing is also an acceptable, tangential title for this. And so I think the use case for AI is fluffy and overstated generally. Yeah. But when people say, oh, we need AI, my question is why? You tell me a business problem you're trying to solve, and then we can figure out if AI is a thing that can solve your business problem. It's not the other way around. You don't adopt AI and then find a use case for it. That's not.
You won't
believe
the right way to do that. I have 3-4 conversations stating the same exact words with my clients. I tell them, for this particular problem statement, you do not need AI. And that's something that I tell them so often, that you don't need it. There's no use case. There's no need over here.
Right.
But it's the shiny new object, and everyone wants to get in some way involved with that shiny object. It's human nature. We can't control it.
You are totally right.
Now, there's another question that I get asked very often, and this is from recruiters or sourcers. And they say, AI is coming, and there's this tool to do that. There's LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is starting with AI, and there's so much over here. Now I don't even have to correct a job description. Chat GPT does that for me. Is my job on the line? I get asked this so often, and it's people across the pyramid. So it could be someone just starting their careers, or it could be someone at a mid-level. Where do you see AI affecting people from the HR industry? Do you think that it's going to in any way cause them to lose the jobs? Because that's the number one question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a scary answer. People are like, wait, what? Yeah, I do. I do think it is. Just the same way that innovation causes job loss and job creation almost consistently as you look back through the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. They all have the same effect. People lose their jobs, more jobs are created. That being said, will 99%, and that's a BS number, it could be 97%, 95%, it's just somewhere in that way upper range. Are they going to lose their jobs? No. What we do requires too much intuitive understanding and too much preset data in order to make decisions that computers aren't up to yet. And what I mean by that is all the years of looking at profiles or meeting people or talking to people in the space or X or Y or Z, those that gained experience, which we would sometimes call like intuition, isn't something you can teach to an AI, or at least not anytime like immediately soon. It takes time to build that up. And so if we're doing that, then no. The other piece is the bots are really only as good as their inputs. It's one of the reasons Chat GPT is so great. It's a large language model. They've had billions of data points put in. This isn't like they started working on this in November and released it in December, right? This is years building this up. So will the average recruitment leader lose their job? No, they will not. If all you're doing all day is messaging candidates, writing messages, writing job descriptions, and scheduling interviews, yeah, maybe, right? Like, could a recruiting coordinator job potentially, depending on what their scope is, be replaced? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could. So the question then would be, what are you doing to differentiate your skill set from something that otherwise a computer could do? And if you don't know the answer to that question, you may want to spend some time figuring that out.
So you've probably spent more than 20 years in the industry. If
Close.
Mike had joined in 2023, what would you be telling yourself if you joined the industry in 2023?
Learn how to code.
Learn how to code. Okay, that's something.
Yeah, straight up. Learn how to code.
All right, awesome.
It's one of those things I look back and man, I wish I'd invested more time into earlier on in my career, because there's so many things that we do now that, because it's the way that we've always done it, it takes an insane amount of time and can be automated if you just knew how to write basic scripts. And I don't, so like I have to use Chat GPT now to do most of that. So it's something like that would be very convenient.
Trust me, I come from a technical background and I still use Chat GPT to help me.
Okay. Code. Perfect.
So it works both ways. I guess both of us are using it for more or less the same purposes.
That's funny. Yeah, I imagine your use case is probably a little more advanced than mine, but I do appreciate that.
Just slightly more advanced.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I have a last question, and this is more so towards just AI personally. So there's a lot about, as you mentioned, that AI that we know is not really AI, and probably what recruiters need is augmented intelligence. It's just that at the end of the day,
I like that. I'm going to take that with me. Augmented intelligence. I'm going to take that with me. Thank you. That's a great one.
It's more about having or giving a recruiter the technology and helping them take the right decision. I guess that's where we are going towards. But how do you balance? AI brings in a lot of bias. So how do you balance the bias that an AI brings versus that human judgment? Where do you stand on that discussion?
Oh gosh, this brings up all sorts of stuff. So where do I stand on this? I think people have made quite a stink about the bias in AI. And here's the deal. They're totally right. There is a bias in AI. There's unconscious bias because it's written by humans. Humans have unconscious bias. But my response then in return would be well, what are you doing about your own unconscious bias? Because if you're really focused on the unconscious bias of this tool and platform, which there should be a focus on, I assume then you're also focused on your own unconscious bias, in which case, what are you doing to alleviate that? Do the same thing, right? So, number one, don't use the outputs from Chat GPT directly to your addressable market. Right? Don't take that job description, copy paste it and go. Take that job description, read through it, have somebody else read through it, run it through a system like a Textio or these other tools that'll give you scores based on bias, as well as things like readability. So number one is don't take the output as gold and run with it. Number two is understand that everything is going to have some level of bias in it. And unless you're really working on eliminating that across the board to the best of your abilities, ChatGPT is just another example of unconscious bias. This isn't like the coup de grace of bias. It's just another form of it. And the more obviously it gets proliferated within the market, the harder it is to deal with. But the truth is, it's something. Unconscious bias is something that has to be dealt with systematically and programmatically. It's not I don't want to do this, so I'm not going to do this. And so
basically, you don't take the output of ChatGPT and use it. You have to have or shared against with 2-3 people and make sure that any kind of bias is kind of eliminated over there, or some kind of a process similar to that.
Some kind of process or system that you're already using, right? Because what happens when, let's say, eliminate ChatGPT and you write a job description? Just you as a human write a job description. Okay, great. Yeah. What are we doing about the unconscious bias in that job description? Well, I don't have any biases. First off, yes, you do. What's your current process for that? It shouldn't be a different process because ChatGPT wrote it. It should be just as rigorous a process. And if the answer is like, oh, well, we don't really have anything that we're doing for Chat GPT specifically, then or for our own like internal written job descriptions and stuff, it's like, well, what's the difference then with Chat GPT? You're just using somebody else's unconscious bias or a series of people's unconscious bias. So I'd be mindful about that. And as a quick random note, I don't know if you've experienced this. This is just a warning for everybody. Don't trust ChatGPT with math.
Absolutely.
Sounds really weird, but like it can explain to you like the 12-day moving average of supply and demand markets given a 3-day forecast and explain to you how to find that. But like ask it to add 2 numbers and square root them, and you have like a 50% chance it's going to give you a bad number.
I asked ChatGPT to divide 6 by 3 and it gave me a weird answer. I guess it gave me 4.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, ChatGPT. Yeah, really weird, right? Like you write my entire JavaScript code that I can now use, but like it literally, the example I gave was literally, it was helping my wife understand moving averages for her master's class. And like it explained the concept so beautifully and she was able to really understand it, but the answers weren't lining up with the answers she was getting. And as we looked back through it, it just didn't get the math right. It literally wrote out the math, and then the answer at the end of it wasn't actually the answer if you just added and rooted the numbers.
We've seen that ourselves. But as you said, it's a large language model. It's not a mathematical model. It's a language model.
That's correct.
I guess we are not using it for the right use case.
That would be right on that, right? Because think about where it pulls the data from, which is it's pulling all of the data from the internet and like publicly available data prior to September of 2001. And like now think of all of your friends and how many of them suck at math. And it's like, okay, well, all of their stuff they posted online is like right or wrong is being used to build this algorithm. So like, I kind of get it.
All right. This has been awesome, Mike. Thank you so much. I think we've had a great conversation on AI and how it can be used in recruitment. I'm reasonably sure that I'll be getting a few questions from people who are going to hear this particular podcast or going to view this on YouTube or on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that if they have questions, I'll direct them towards you.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm definitely happy to help if anybody has any other follow-up questions or wants to see any of this. I've demonstrated that tool Clay I mentioned, as well as ChatGPT and kind of how they work in conjunction with each other. So I am happy to kind of help however I can. I mean that, I know people listening are like, oh, that's nice. But like if 2 people reach out to me, I'd be blown away. For whatever reason, people just don't do that. So like, please, I am here to help, but it is important to me to give back to the community. So reach out with questions.
You're a super sourcer. So what's your tech stack like? What are the tools that you love to use to get your work done?
Oh man. So one of the things I'm working on for this year is a white paper with the hypothesis of why companies shouldn't use a tool to do things. They should create redundancy across tools because the level of redundancy they think is created is not. So what do I mean? Right now, I'm just going to quick list all of the sourcing platforms that I have enterprise access to. This isn't like I downloaded a Chrome extension. I have full access to these tools and I use. So here we go. Ready? Amazing Hiring, Chatterworks, Clay, Crunchbase Pro, Intello, Exact Buyer, Hire Easy, Heartbeat, Horsefly, Human Predictions, Lead 411, LinkedIn Recruiter, Loxo, RecruitBot, SeekOut, ZoomInfo, Recruiter, and Perfect.
Is that 16 or did I get that number wrong?
I think it might be a drop less. I have more than 16, but I just listed the ones I actively use. And if you're like, yeah, but how many of them are returning the same results? Like if I run the same search on, let's say, LinkedIn Recruiter and SeekOut, right? Those are 2 pretty common ones. What would you think? A legit question, Amrit. What would you think the crossover is in terms of duplication, in terms of a percent? What percentage of the candidates are duplicated if I run for the same job on both platforms?
At least 60%, I would assume.
So in all of my years of doing this, we have never, ever had it over 40% ever.
Okay.
And typically you're looking at sub 10% redundancy, 20% if you're now on your third platform. And typically it doesn't get too much higher than that. And the reason, and people are like, yeah, but it's all the same, you're accessing the same databases. To a large degree, yes, I know tons of tools are like, oh, we have all these other. Most people seed from LinkedIn, which makes sense, right? It's the largest professional database in the world, right? What makes it different, though, is the sourcing capabilities. So how you actually are able to search through the data itself. So it's not what data at the end you grab, it's how you're getting to the data. And so Hire Easy, is very AI driven. And so you got these algorithms in the back that are doing a bunch of work for you. Seek Out has the most deep dive, ridiculous Boolean capabilities to search through profiles. So you're able to find really specific things on profiles. And LinkedIn Recruiter uses its own form of AI to, associate what it thinks you want to what you're actually looking for. And so you wind up getting completely different lists. And so if you're asking me what my favorite tools are, I can do that. But I do use a large swath of tooling intentionally to try and find the gems that other tools can't find. Now, my favorite sourcing tool is Seek Out. And the reason for that is the deep dive Boolean capabilities. I love Boolean, and I love being in control of my search and knowing exactly what's going to come back to me. And there is no other tool except for Seek Out that's really deep diving that well. A newer tool that's come out called Exact Buyer, which is built for the sales side, but it has a recruiting workflow built in as well, is starting to compete with that. And I'm really excited to see where they're going. Sky Adon, who's one of the founders, is building some cool stuff there. Clay, which is that tool I mentioned to you. It's basically a spreadsheet tool. So if you like spreadsheets at all, first off, yay. Second, check out Clay. It is literally a spreadsheet with built-in enrichments and integrations. You can run a Google search or a LinkedIn search and then pull the data from there. You can have it find email addresses, find news articles, find LinkedIn posts, integrate with Chat GPT. It's very cool. For email automation, Sourcewell is my go-to. The deliverability is incredibly good. The customizations, the modifiers are incredibly good. The email finding is very, very good. And you can put modifiers in images, which people are like, okay, that's cool. But if you ever got an email with your name in a funny meme, very rare that somebody would be like, unsubscribe. It's like your name's in a meme. You're doing all right. Yeah. Contact info, Swordfish is still my number one. And then I also use Signal Hire, and then Sourcewell, Hire Easy, Seek Out, etc. And Zoom Info, which is great. And then for screening candidates, I use either Honeit or SmartRank. Honeit for the actual phone screen itself. It records the phone screen. It makes your submissions really, really unique, in depth, and removes as much bias as possible from the process, in my opinion. And then SmartRank is more for the when you don't want to do a phone screen, or you want to offer your candidates the ability to like, hey, we can go through this process where you'll get your questions answered, and you can do an initial screening, make sure that you're the right fit so you don't waste your time. It'll take you 3 minutes instead of a 30-minute phone call type of a deal. So kind of offering that flexibility.
Wonderful. I think I will try to map each of these products in the footnote of our blog or of our podcast, so that anyone who's listening to this can just get through to some of these products. Thank you again, Mike. I think this is really, really an energizing session, and I look forward to having another conversation with you very soon.
I look forward to that as well, man. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, you as well.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.